Hello everybody, this video follows on from the week 4 workshop video. So at the point we finished the workshop, we had this version of the app that was using core data to store the different movies, and we could select a cell but that did nothing, and we could tap the detail disclosure indicator and it correctly went and viewed that information. One of the things I didn't show is these just have the order that they were added to core data in, and you can see they're actually just randomly accessed. One of the things you might want to do is put them back into an ordered, back to be ordered. And the way we can do this is when we perform the fetch request. This is the generic fetch request we get from the movie object. But if we wanted to, we could put in sort descriptors and do this by, say, release date. And if we did this and ran it, then we would see these starting from 2022. If we wanted to, we could change this to false, and that would be the other way around, and we'd have 2025 first with the newest ones first. So in like reverse chronological order. Or if we wanted, we could put this back to order by title if we wished, and that would put them in alphabetical order like you see here. I'm going to leave them as the way we originally had them sorted initially. So we'll put that in here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add this new favorite movie table view controller. So to do that, I'm going to go to the storyboard. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to go to my objects inspector and add a brand new table view here. We'll let that get created, which should hopefully take a second. We'll wait for the storyboard to load. Great. I'm going to make a movie cell, just so we can use very similar code for this movie cell, and I can specify its type, and I guess we can just say its style is the same as the one on this table view. So it's a subtitle style, it's called movie cell. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom class for it. So this is all stuff that we've seen before. So I'll say new file from clipboard, I'll say Cocoa Touch class, I'll say favorite movies, table view controller. We'll click next. Let that get created. Here it is. So this will be pretty blank. It's going to be quite similar. And in my storyboard, I'm going to set the custom class for this. So this is all things we've seen a few different times now. So I'll say favorite movies, table view controller. I'm not going to set any title for this. We are going to put it as the root view controller of this navigation controller. So I can control click from the navigation controller. I can say set it up as the root view controller. So now we've got our initial view controller, the navigation controller. We've got this favorites table view controller, and we've got this select movie view controller, and we've got our detailed view controller. So what we'll do now is I'm going to set up a tab bar button. So here's my tab bar item. No, that's not right. Sorry, not tab bar item. I want a navigation bar button, or bar button item, that would be called. Bar button item, there we go. Here it is. So there's my bar button item. We'll select that in the attributes inspector. We'll set its system item to be add, and then it'll get the typical plus thing. And I'll make it so when we click on plus, it transitions to this view controller. So at this point, I should be able to run app. This will just be blank, it won't show anything. And we can kind of see the layout of the app. So this is our initial view controller. I click plus, I end up back here. We're probably going to select a movie, and then when it's selected, it will go back and add it to this favorites list, and this will all be done in core data. So let's start writing the code of this view controller. So we'll come into our favorites table view controller, and the first thing, I'm going to use core data for this. So let's import core data here. I'll just check everything is still recording. It is. So import core data. When we've imported core data, we're going to need a couple of things in here. We're going to need our array of movies, just like in our other view controller. So that just looks pretty much the same. I can actually even just grab that, because we'll use pretty much exactly the same thing we have here. But we're also going to need a property to hold our user. So I'm going to say var user, and its type is going to be, yeah, exactly, our core data user class, which we've got here. It's an optional, so it can be nil initially. When this loads, we're going to do some core data loading. Now, the very first thing I need to do is get the context, and that's exactly like we did it earlier in the workshop demo. So in our load data method, we need some code just like this. Once we have the context, we can perform a fetch to see that we have a user. So the easiest way to do this would be to say, we can pretty much mirror what we had in our movie detail, our movie view controller, where you see we got a fetch request of the movie type. In this case, it's going to be the user type, and we perform some code to access it. So, you know, we basically need this bit, and then we need this bit here. So let's do that. We can say let fetch request be equal to user dot fetch request. So there's our fetch request, and this should only be, we're only going to have one user. We don't need this as fetch request, because that's, as we said in the workshop, the same type that this already returns. So it's our code completion just not being particularly useful. Then we're going to say user equals, or users maybe. Let's create an array of users here, because the type that a fetch returns is an array of users. So I'm actually going to say let users be an array of user type, and initially it's just going to be empty. I'll make this a var so we can modify it. So we access our users here with a fetch request, so that's all fine. If the fetch failed, we'll show why it failed. At this point, we'll know if there's a user stored in the database or not. So I guess if there is, we can say if let first user equals users first, and this will always give us the first element of the array. If there is no first element, this will return nil, and therefore with this optional binding we have here, the whole if statement will fail if there's no first element. If there is a first element, then we're going to set our user property of the class, which is the one defined here, to be first user. And yeah, this is this correct? I'm not sure you can actually do this, but also this is dangerous, and actually it's not even correct, because we know user will be oh, this is unwrapping the optional value for user, first user. I would write this code quite differently, and in fact I don't even want to do it here, so let's just skip this for the moment. This is one code path. We have a user. Here we also want to deal with the case where there's no user. If there's no user, we basically want to add one. So how we can do that is kind of like what we saw before, which is we can say create a new user given a context. I don't want any of that. Here what I want to do is I can say user dot name, and I could say Michael. You could do something else too, but I'm going to set it as Michael. And then once I've done this, I want to save the context. So I'm going to say app delegate.save context. At this point, if there was already a user, I'm accessing it. If there was no user, I'm creating one. And that's just so we've got something to store this with. If you were working with multiple users, then you could use a predicate and select a user with a particular name, or you could have a whole view controller to show users, a bit like in our lab extension activity. They're all possibilities. But here I'm just going to work with one because we know there's only one. The next thing I would do here is I need to set up the list of movies so I can display it. Now, the user has this relationship, and from the relationship we can get the set of movies. So how you would do that is you can say movies and it equals, and then you can say user, and you can say favorite movies. And favorite movies here is an NS set. So from the NS set, you can ask for all objects, and all objects, as you can see, returns an array of any. So it just gives you back everything that's in the set. And we can cast this as a movie. The way this is written, it should be, we know that this will only contain movies. So I mean, it would be safe to do this, but it's a little safer just to ensure it doesn't crash to do this as an optional. And if it fails, we haven't actually seen this before, I don't think, but this is what's called a nil coalescing operator. And what this means is if the expression on the left evaluates as nil, and that could be because user is nil, or favorite movies is nil, or because it gets all objects and it tries to cast it to an array of the core data movie objects, and if it can't for whatever reason, this will also be nil. And that just says if any of those things are nil, then rather than this whole thing not work, we replace the value with an empty array, and this, the thing on the right, the nil coalescing operator, is what gets assigned to movies. So in this case, our array of movies would just be nil. So when this is done, there's one final thing that I might want to do, regardless of whether I've created the user or I've loaded it. I might want to set my navigation item, and yeah, you could set it to favorite movies, but actually I want to set it to like Michael's favorites. And how I would do that is here I could say user, actually let's do this. This is going to be an optional. So rather than use an optional, I'm just going to do this and unwrap it. So if let name equals user dot name, and if it has a value, then we can use its name. If it doesn't, we just won't bother with this. So then we can say name in here and say like something's favorite. So we can do a quick test. There still won't be anything displayed in the table view, but when we do this, we see the favorite thing, and this would give us the movies. Now, this would work okay if we're performing the fetch and we're manually handling any updates. So we perform the fetch once. If the user then goes in here and clicks on one of these, we would need to let this view controller know, we would need to add the item to core data, we would need to update the table view. And you can totally do that. You could do it with a delegation relationship. So this view could be set up as a delegate of this view controller. And when you select a movie in here, you call a method on its delegate. The delegates gets notified which movie was selected, and it does the work to update the table view. That's great, but what would be easier for us, and what I particularly want to show in this demo, is how we can do this with a fetched results controller. And we set up the fetch, and then that fetch results controller watches core data to see if anything changes with that fetch request. If it does, it calls some delegate methods to handle the updates. And that way, we can have this view controller basically watching core data for changes to a list of movies. If there are any, it will update the table view. So we can have a look at that. It means basically instead of us setting the movies array like this, we do something a little different. So let's have a look at what that would look like. And this means what I'm actually going to do on this view controller is I'm going to set it so this view controller will pass the user, in this case Michael, onto this view controller, and this view controller will just set up that user as the person that favorited the particular movie, and by doing that it will cause core data to update and make the update here. So we won't have any kind of delegation relationship. You could look at that and go, oh okay, but then this means that this view controller can only really be used to select favorite movies because it's very tied to the user class. And you'd be right in thinking that. So you could also write a more generic version of this where the logic to add it lied in this favorites view controller, and therefore this view controller doesn't need to know anything about the user. It just tells its delegate which movie was selected. They're just different ways of doing it. For simplicity in this demo, I'm just going to show you this fetch results controller method. So let's maybe look at what the process just to update this view controller would be. So the select movie view so the what's called the movies table view controller. I'm actually going to rename this because it's confusing me that it's called this. So let's refactor this one, rename it, and call it select movie table view controller. All right, so we've got this select movie table view controller. I'm going to have it so that this one is going to have a user potentially, right? When we create this, if we set a user, then when the selection happens, we can add that particular movie. So how we could do this is we could find and implement this method called didSelectRowAtIndexPath, and that should already have a stub in here. Probably commented out. Table view can edit. Do we have didSelectRow? Let's have a look. Perhaps not. Okay. So let's just add that. It's a delegate method, and we would say didSelectRowAtIndexPath. Okay, so here it is, table view didSelectRowAtIndexPath. This is basically called whenever we click on one of these like this, it would cause that row to be selected. So I guess what we want to do here is we want to get the movie. How you would do that is exactly like we've done in these other methods. We would say, here's the movie. And then we want to say if let user, which is checking that that user is set and unwrapping it. And if there is, we want to say user dot well, actually the easiest way to do this is probably just say movie dot favorited by is equal to user, right? And by doing it, it will set up the inverse relationship as well. And then when we've done this, we probably want to pop this view controller. So we can say navigation controller dot pop view controller animated true, and it should, if there is a user set, it will tell this movie that it's favorited by that user, and then it will pop the view controller. If we run this at the moment, there won't be any user set, so this line won't be run and it won't do anything. So we can tap on something and it'll just go back to the previous screen. So that's fine. That's pretty much all the work we should need to do. Oh, I guess there's one other thing we should do. We should probably save the context, because if you make this change, it won't be persisted until the context is saved. So ideally, we also would do that. And we need to then check. App delegate. So we just need this. So I'll just put this in here, and we'll just say app delegate. And you can see we're loading this app delegate in a couple of places. So this could actually be done as a property of the class and lazily loaded, and we'll have it in one place. I might change that just before I put it up on Moodle, but we'll leave it for now. All right, so let's now make the changes we would need to in our favorite movies table view controller to use a fetched results controller. So to do this, I guess the thing we need to do first of all is, instead of having this list of movies here, we do everything through a fetched results controller. So we would say var fetched results controller, and then this is equal to an ns fetched results controller, and its type is movie, not user, because we want it to have a list of movies. And this can be an optional because we'll set it down below. Okay, so then once we've got a particular user here, either way, we need to set up this. We can set up the navigation items title, but instead of the movies here, we want to set up this fetched results controller. So how we would do this is we would set up the fetch request for the movies. So how you would do that is pretty much exactly like what we did here with our user fetch request, but we're doing one for movies. So let's say setup fetched results controller, and we'll say let movies fetched fetch request be equal to movie dot fetch request. Okay, so when we've got this, you don't need that, the thing it keeps suggesting. We may want this bit. What would the... Yeah, okay. This is, some of this we may want something more complicated. Let's just write it ourselves. Basically, the first thing we want is, we may want an ordering, and ordering would look exactly like what we had before. So, just like this, where we have a name, sort descriptor, and we say that the fetch request is equal to the named sort descriptor. So let's just say movie fetch request. Then what we will do is we just want the movies that correspond to this user. And you saw one way of doing it that the predictive AI code gen was suggesting, but there's a simpler way that's also more readable, which is to just do it like this. Which is we can say that the favorited by property is equal to, and we can pass it the user. Now, this is one way of doing it. You could also specify that the name is equal to Michael. And if you did that and give it the string Michael, that would also work. So there's a range of different ways that you could do this, but we can also give it this user property that we just had above. We should also check that, ideally check that this is unwrapped as well. Then the creation of the fetch request is basically like this, where we get fetch request, we give it our movie fetch request, we give it a context, and then when we've got this fetch results controller, we set the delegate equal to the self, which at the moment it can't do, and it can't do because it's not of the correct type. So we need to add the delegate to the class, so it tells it that it's going to be a delegate of this fetch results controller. So we can do that, and basically what it's done is it's added this to the top, and then it's next going to complain that some of those delegate methods are missing. The final thing we would need to do here, once we set the delegate, is actually tell it to perform that initial fetch. And we have to do this in a do catch block, so it looks kind of similar to the stuff we've done up here. So I'm just going to grab this. And the work that we need to do in here is just say try, and given the fetched results controller, we tell it to perform fetch. Right, and this can throw, hence the try, and we can say fetched. Fetched results controller fetch failed. So we can just check this. Now this is everything we need to do to set up the fetch results controller. If you wanted all movies, you wouldn't need these two lines. If you didn't care how it was sorted and you just wanted a random order, you wouldn't need these two lines. So basically, it's the same as performing a fetch, but instead of just performing the fetch and getting the values once, we initialize a fetch results controller. We, excuse me, set ourselves as the delegate, and then we tell it to perform the fetch. And then what happens after that is anytime anything changes in core data related to this fetch, and that means in this case movies set to this user would change, or you know, in the name of one of them would change, and therefore the ordering would change. It will notice any of these and call the necessary delegate methods. Now the necessary delegate methods are described in the Apple documentation. So as an example, here's a page talking about creating a fetch results controller, and it's got both Objective-C and Swift code. This is pretty much what we've gone through with how to initialize it and set it up. You see here's the request, here's the sort descriptors, and then here's us performing the fetch, and here's us checking the error. Then we need to also do this part, which is basically the delegate methods that get called when things change. Actually, sorry, this is not the case. This is how you actually read from it, which we can pretty much copy. So our number of sections in the table view needs to look like this. It's a fetch results controller sections.count. So let's actually just follow this code, and we'll do this now. So here's our number of sections. We use our fetch results controller. In this case, oh, this is an optional, so I'm going to check this as nil. Check this has a value. If it doesn't, we'll use this nil coalescing operator again, as we did before, and just set 0. This is a bit safer. The number of rows in section, well, you get the sections, you can guard against there not being any sections, then you get the number of objects. So basically we replace this code with what's here. And again, I'll just unwrap this. How we configure the cell, well, this looks almost like what we have in our other view controller here. So here's our did select row here's our cell for row at index path method. So it's going to look almost exactly like this, but not entirely. So we make the cell and we configure it. The difference is here for the movie, I need to get this from my fetched results controller. And how I get it from my fetched results controller is via, there's an object at index path method. So I can say fetched results controller. Oh, where's my typing on? Here we go. Fetch results controller, object at, and we give it an index path. In this case, here's my index path. And this returns us the object at this particular index path. Now, an issue with this is that it's not going to be of the movie type. So we also need to say that this should be of type movie. And we hope that this works. Let's do this with optional unwrapping. And assuming it is, we could configure the cell. If it isn't valid, we could also show an error message of some kind. But I'll leave that up to you to check or to implement. What we haven't done is the rest of what's required in here. So I mean, basically what we just did was, you could follow this code, object at index path. To get the object to that particular place, we populate the cell. Final thing is here, this is how we handle changes that happen to the table view. And again, we can just copy this Swift code and pretty much just take it exactly as it is. A couple of things to note. When you perform updates like this, they can happen in batches. So what Swift will actually do with the delegate is it will first call this table view begin updates method. It will tell the controller there's some content about to change. It might do insert 3 rows and delete 2 and move 1. And they can all be batched together because it begins updates. It will insert some sections, delete some sections, insert rows, delete rows, and then it will end the updates. So we can just take all of this code here for the Swift code. I hope this is not going to copy line numbers. We'll just check, otherwise I've got it somewhere else I can copy it from. No, all good. So, yeah, okay. And actually, that's pretty much all I should need to do to implement addition with any luck. It should load. If I click on one of these, no, it didn't work. Interesting. Okay. So let me just have a quick look. So let me just check we've got everything. So we've got users. We have a user, we set up our fetch, we perform our fetch, we should have everything in the table view, number of sections, number of rows in section, here are my sections, here's the section info, number of objects, and then I get the movie object. All right, so this is a good place to figure out, because that looks pretty good to me. Then we've got our delegate methods that are implemented here. There's a few things we can check. Oh, I know what we haven't done. We never set the user when we call this other view controller. So I mean, I could set some breakpoints and we could see, but we'll never actually see any of these be called. So the other thing we need to do here is what we've done a few times. And in my storyboard here, when we click this plus button, we need to give this a name like select movie segue. I'll save that identifier and just click off it just to make sure it's saved. In my favorite movies table view controller, I'm going to say if segue dot identifier equals select movie segue, then we're going to say let destination equals segue dot destination as and the view controller here is a select movie table view controller. This one's safe, we know it will always be this type. And then we're going to say destination dot user is equal to our user from this class. Should be good. We'll just check that that actually saves. Let's have a look. So we click plus, yes, it's come here, and hit that breakpoint. So we'll carry on. We come here, we click on one of these, and we see it gets added. So great. So it's obeying the changes in core data. We can see it's keeping them in, what order did we put them in? I don't remember. We said in title order. Okay, so you'll see if we add something like 28 days later, it will appear at the top of that list, and you'll quickly see it animate in as I hit this. Shunk, you can see it animate in. At the moment, we don't have the deletion, so I can add that. What would we do for that? So the deletion should just be one of these. Can edit row. So yes, we can edit rows, and commit editing style delete, and here you can see we would delete the row. What we want to do is we want to get the movie at this index path. So how we would do that is just like this. Same thing we did in our cell for right index path. Delete rows. And deleting the table view row doesn't do anything here because excuse me, the table view, all of its updates are backed by the fetch results controller now. So to delete something, all we really need to do is tell core data that that thing has changed. So how we would do that is we could get the movie as a movie, assuming that we have a movie, we know the movie will have a favorited by property in here. So we can say to the movie, favorited by, and just set this to nil. And then it will no longer be favorited by Michael, and it should disappear off this list. So hopefully, when I do this, I should now be able to swipe on this, and when I delete it, it just disappears, and you see the table view updates around it. Okay, great. So that's pretty much the whole demo. One other little thing I could do, I mean, we could also allow it so that if you tap on this, it goes to that other detail view controller. So you could see the details from both this screen or from this screen over here. That would be kind of nice. I'll leave that up to you. That's easy, little selection thing. Something else also is in the storyboard. Many of Apple's own apps would use what are called large titles, and they look like this, and if I run the app, they'll look like this kind of thing, where it's quite large, and then as you scroll, it sort of turns into a little bar at the top, and that's quite common in Apple's own apps. And you know, when you click here, you might want it on this screen, but maybe you don't want it on this screen. So it's possible to control that a little bit. So we could say, come into here and select this navigation item. And there's a thing that says large title, and you can say never. So we can make it so the detailed movie view controller just doesn't show this. And it would look like this. It's big here. When I tap on this, also large, but when I tap on one of these, it just shows us the small version. So we'll end this video there. There's an example of using a fetched results controller. So now this first screen is backed by a fetched results controller. And you see, if you take that template code, it sort of just handles all of the updates. If you make a change into core data, it's going to notice the changes and just update everything for you. And yeah, thanks for watching.